Hello, everyone. Happy Wednesday. I think most of us are in California, so I'm going to say I hope you're enjoying that sunshine, a little bit of warmth. We have weather all over the place. If this is your first time joining us, hello, my name is Sadie, and I am the media producer for the Los Angeles Regional SBDC. The SBDC is a national program with over 1,000 locations across the country, helping to stimulate economic growth through business advising and development. The LASBDC offers no-cost services through funding provided by the U.S. Small Business Administration, SBA, and from the California Office of the Small Business Advocate. It's your tax dollars at work. Oh, and we're having, there we go. The Los Angeles Regional SBDC Network operates 7 service locations throughout Los Angeles, Santa Barbara, and Ventura counties. Our services are also offered virtually. We are here to help. We empower small business owners by offering tailored solutions through personalized one-on-one business advising, cutting-edge workshops, and comprehensive programs, all provided at no cost. We are dedicating to supporting your entrepreneurial journey every step of the way. Lori, did you enjoy that one? That is what I call my presentation with a 98 sleep score.
Yes. Sadie was informing us that she got a 98 sleep score this morning. So awesome. Okay, guys, before we get started, I was just ready and then I realized I made a comment last week and I know my frequent flyers are going to keep me to this. So I said I would show you proof of a picture of me and my cat in the rain, right? I told you that, right? So here is two. Yeah, there Chris is remembering. Here's photo ops. Remember the thing I told you? That was one of Lori's wisdom shares. Make sure that when you take your cat for a walk in the rain, they have a full rain jacket on. Okay, guys, ready? Here you go. You only see these things from me. There you go. So this is two separate days. You could see we got a full rain gear there, and you can see she is extremely happy in her little rain jacket as we go out for rain. So I didn't make that up. So there, is that pretty funny?
I love it. I love it.
Okay, guys, let's get to some serious stuff now. See, I always make a promise and I show you things, right? We do love going out in the rain and walking. She goes, my cat goes everywhere with me. People heard me talk about it. The only place she does not go is the grocery store out of respect. She has a backpack, numerous tents. Yeah, it's like out of control. Okay, let's get going on today's information and today's show. Oh, I'm going to kind of give you a warning too. You know, we got Lori's Corner and I always talk about things. I think today I'm really rambling on. I kind of started that last week, so I think I'm going to continue on my little rambling session. Okay, so first of all I can put up is my October webinars on this, but Sadie's got my November's calendar as well. She is sticking it in the chat for you. Okay, let's see. Zoom is wanting to do all kinds of things today. Here's our upcoming shows. I got a little bit of the lineup coming also for November. So next week we have Michelle Perkins come on, and she's been on probably about a year and a half now. It could even have been 2 years. Her company is Limit Free Life. She's an executive career coach. She also talks about people's relationship with money and how that can change whether money comes into their life or not. And that was a topic that she delved into the last time she was on. Everybody loved it, so decided, yep, need to have her come back on and talk about that. We're getting near the end of the year, so in November and then December, I'm going to pick up a few people to come in and kind of talk about different things for taxes, getting prepared for taxes, getting your accounting in order, all that kind of regulation stuff. So Tanya, once again, has been on the show one time before. Excellent person, explaining things in a simple manner, which I love. And she has an accounting and tax strategy practice. She's a tax preparer. So having her come on and tell us everything we need to know to get ready, because I like getting the tax information kind of organized before the end of the year, because by the time next year comes around, you're not as aware of the numbers. It's easier to kind of fix errors or cite errors and see them if you look at it before the year's end and you're over it, right? So that's why I'm addressing these topics now. Xiomara was on last week and we got involved in talking about the independent contractor and all the rules. I know you guys who saw that. That was a pretty interesting one, wasn't it? So I told her, you know, and I had to get her on pretty quickly because there's also other things that she wants to go over, some new HR rules, and yeah, kind of finish up a little bit about the independent contractor. So I put her on the schedule right away to continue that conversation. And then Jenny's Graham reached out to me, and her company is called Leaving, yes, Leaving in Style, and it's a business strategy and succession planning. And I do get asked that every once in a while. So I think it's really going to be interesting to hear from her perspective what she's seeing and experiencing with small companies regarding what they're doing for succession planning. I know much of our audience is kind of like, let me just grow the thing, but many people say to me, I want to, you know, create something that's eventually going to be there, blah, blah, blah. So that's why I think it's not a bad idea to have somebody come on and talk about that. Okay, I'm just trying to get some of these boxes out of my way today. Okay, here we go. You're everybody ready for Lori's rambling? Here we go in Lori's corner. Okay. I use the word discernment a lot. I always say we have to have discernment. It's a common term, common phrase I say. And I gave you the actual, you know, definition of discernment. But what happened I thought was interesting is I was speaking this week about doing research. And of course, the research I'm always speaking about is in relationship to tax information, finance information, and especially information about setting up a legal structure. Because, you know, I talk a lot about, and I did last week, about people who go onto social media, they gather this data, they set up these legal structures or fill out their own tax forms only to find out they're incorrect. And then the government's breathing down their neck and they're crying. You know, happens a lot and has happened a lot in the last couple weeks with different things. So somebody said to me, though, is they said, you use the word discernment. What do you mean? And I really thought that was fascinating because my answer was not quick because I had to think about it. And when I thought about it, I realized there's an inherent pathways that I just have developed over my decades of experience in business that I used when I was trying to get information and data pre-internet. And so when I sat down and wrote about some of these rules that are in my head, I don't even think about, but they kind of exist. I dawned on me how even more important it is today when you're doing research on the internet. And my speech, a lot of times, especially to the younger entrepreneurs that are just taking things as verbatim, is that you really have to have discernment. But the troubling part of this is it's not necessarily front of mind. You get scam things from what looks to be like government, and it's not. You have people who appear to have background giving information, but they don't really know what they're talking about. You even have people who are technically licensed or have the education that don't know what they're talking about, right? So I started writing this long list. I'm only going to go over a few, but these are things that I had to kind of pull out of myself and go, what do I do when I'm looking for information? Well, this is what I would say begins a thought process. So it's a thought process. So say I'm trying to find something out outside of my area of expertise, okay? I was telling Sadie I'm involved in a electrical wiring project right now, and I'm having to depend on myself. So this is an ideal situation for me to think about how did I go about it? Well, the first thing I do is when I'm pulling up a lot of information, these are the red flags. I see things that are inconsistent. Somebody said this, but then somebody said this, and then somebody said this. When I see inconsistent, what it does is it tells me this is not a simple, straightforward answer. So it puts me at a heightened awareness of needing research and to go to more authority type places to find that out. It's like danger, danger, Will Smith, right? So you can see this when you look for a legal structure and you see people, you know, say, well, this versus that, you kind of get that feeling there may be complexity to it, but not also. Now, another big red flag I look for is incongruence. Somebody says you absolutely need this, you absolutely see you need this, and somebody says you absolutely need this. It lets me know that there's some heat opinion behind these topics. That makes it even more concerning and means I got to look into it even deeper. I got to go down the rabbit hole because when there's heavy incongruence on a topic, then I know that there's bias, there's subject bias. People believe this to be true and they may not have looked at new or changing evidence. So there's bias when there's strong incongruence, right? If there is consensus, now this is an interesting one, guys. If there's consensus and almost everybody says the same thing, in the olden days, I would go, great, got it. That's the information. But what's fascinating, and this one's really fascinating to me, is consensus scares me because that means that people aren't thinking it necessarily through. If you say to me, where is this building located? It's at this address. Okay, consensus is good. Maps, is good. Consensus. I can agree with that. But if it's a topic that has a lot of different aspects to it and everybody's saying the same thing, that means that people are just regurgitating, my favorite word on this, regurgitating the data without actually thinking or researching, because then it just, with the internet, it can go viral really quick and suddenly it looks like everybody thinks this is true, but it's not even true at all. So consensus today actually scares me because it tells me that not too many people are stopping and going, whoa, is this always true? And when I see too much consensus, I search for incongruence. And that incongruence may actually be the truth. It's like it's upside down, right? And then what I look for is expertise blind sight. Now, what I mean by that is, like, for example, this person who has a company, they had a company, maybe they did well in their company, but they think they're now an expert on every topic. Now, they may know the right legal entity for them. That doesn't mean they're an expert on every topic. And then I look at what I call scope creep. It's creeping outside their scope, and people are assigning different values to it. For example, people will go to a tax specialist to ask them about whether they're profitable when that's more of a CFO topic. So you have to look at what really is that expertise and understand that expertise. So that's my listing of things I do intuitively to start looking. And it is a ramble, but I do say this from the bottom of my heart as a reason I'm bringing this up because I literally am seeing far too many people take financial, legal, and tax actions on what they're reading and then getting nasty letters that are not pleasant. And the one I just got that somebody didn't sign up for the things properly is a $19,000 fine for an LLC that made zero money, zero, didn't do anything. So it's getting scary out there. You want to make sure you know what you're doing. Okay, with that, no further ado. And by the way, if you have any questions on anything, always reach out to the SBDC. As you know, I'm tax, finance, and legal, but I have a whole groups of colleagues that talk about so many different things that can give you other input. I'm very excited to have our welcome back guest, our champions coming back. John Gaines is the CEO and founder of Moving Minds, a company with a mission to transform the world of education, unleashing the full potential of every learner and ensuring they have the opportunity to thrive in a challenging world. The company develops specifically designed products and services to provide schools with the support they need to ensure the academic success of students. John, welcome back to the show. I'm so glad to have you back on the show. It's been, what, a couple years now, I think.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. I think so. Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate you inviting me back, and love to talk about what we're going to focus on today.
Well, and what's awesome is, as everything is changing, there's so much changing within your company. But I want to first, for the listeners, because it's been a while, and I think that we got a whole new group. We got our frequent flyers that have been here forever, but we have also a new group of listeners. So let's go back to kind of where your history was in starting the company. I'm not going to go back to the degree we did last time, but there was something about your childhood growing up, your experience in education that prompted you to start the company. I think that's a really important aspect. And then what the company does.
Yeah, so going back to when I was in school, I know I was always the kid that when they taught, like, in a math class, when they taught math, I just didn't understand it the way that they explained it. And I had my own way to do it always. And sometimes, they would get, upset over the way I would do it. And they're like, no, that's not how you're supposed to do it. I'm like, but that's how I understand it. Or I would always ask, like, well, why can't you do this? Like, I remember there was a class on fractions. I'm like, well, why can't you put a decimal in the numerator? And they're like, because you just don't do it. I'm like, why not?
Why not?
Like I was always that kid, right? And I thought, like, and so when I went into the field and I taught math myself, I allowed that to happen in the classroom. And that's where I saw kids who want to be, they wanted to explore math and learn more about math. And I saw them really grow. And not just in math, but in their ability as a learner. And they just really got inspired. And so I built that up, in the classroom. And then I thought, you know what, like right now, I'm just impacting one classroom. Like, what if I can impact, schools across the United States, and um, put this out there, this philosophy or this approach.
No, I love that story. I talk about it every time I give my webinars, and you've heard me mention about my trouble with math. You've heard me say that at the beginning of my webinars, and it's mostly to help people who feel they don't know math so they can't learn finance. No, I was the one who hated math. And I can resonate with what you're saying. And I think early on, I couldn't understand the rules. And so when the rules wouldn't be explained, or at least me go, well, why not, and be able to explore it, the rules made no sense and it gave me no foundation to learn. It kind of like shut me down internally because I didn't know how to build the model to learn from. So I just want to say there's such validity, and I think that's one of the problems with math. Over other topics and subjects where they'll discuss them, where math is nope, you just don't do it and this is it, move on. But so you can't even understand why you're trying to figure this out anyway, because you doesn't understand why you need X. At that age, I can't figure out why I need to find X, and then I don't understand why this doesn't apply in this situation, and you just go, well, whatever. I just had to comment on that. Absolutely. So when did you begin moving minds? I don't even remember the answer to this. It's been a long time ago, hasn't it?
It's about a little over 10 years ago. I was still teaching. I was teaching full time, and I was doing a lot of clubs during lunch and clubs after school with the kids because they kept asking me like, what can we do with math? Like, what's the point of math? And in the textbook, it doesn't really go into that. So I'm like, well, I'll show you. And so I taught stuff on how to code, on robotics, and other things that applied to them that they were interested in, but I showed them math in it. And then it got to a point where the principal, suggested that she's like, you need to be paid for this. This is a lot of extra work you're doing. I didn't want to. I'm like, you know what? It's a lot of work. It is, so I charged for one class and the demand grew. And then I got calls from other schools saying, hey, we heard what you're doing over there. Can you teach the same thing over here? So I started doing more and then it just grew and grew and grew and demand grew. I had to hire employees and it just built up from there.
That's fascinating because what you did is you turned math into a real experience. Now they're seeing where it's applied rather than I'm just trying to find X and follow these rules. So
Right.
I think that's really fascinating. Something, and I don't even know if I'm wording this right because I don't even know my own question on this, John, but I'm wondering, since you've had such a long standing in math as a subject and math as applicable to situations, are you finding, okay, this is almost a trick question. I can't help to ask it because my mind comes up with these questions. Are you finding we as humans, maybe the ones younger than us, are we getting a better understanding of math, or is the computers taking the math away from us so much we're getting a less understanding of math?
It's a good question. What I see is that the computers they can add more to the math, to how the kids understand math, but we're not training the instructors on how to do it well. Because like there's a lot of, like when I taught math, when we got into geometry, kids had a really tough time imagining or visualizing the shapes and even three-dimensional shapes. I mean, forget it. That it was just, really tough. But I could see a computer being able to model that, but then we have to, train the staff on how to teach that. So
Yeah.
the computers present the opportunity, but we're just not there yet, so.
Yep. Yeah, that's fascinating that you answered it the way you did. And the reason why I was even prompted to ask it, and you were right in line with my thought process, interestingly. And because you've taken some of my finance classes, I teach people about the circle, 100% of revenue, and this percentage is your cost of goods, etc. I ended up drawing circles and having literally people be on a Zoom and draw the circle and draw what 50% is and label it, because when I would speak the percentages, they didn't have an internal relationship with, okay, that's a part of the dollar that goes towards productions. And once I had people drawing circles, they got it. And that's where I think it's like, I love the computer, I love spreadsheets because I can do, quick scenario planning, but we've gotten away from what the numbers seem to actually mean in the real physical world. So that's kind of what I heard you say as well.
Yeah, what you just said is another thing that, that's what we talk about, and that's what we see in math. The kids, learn to do the math, but they don't know what that answer means. They don't know what the numbers mean. And so that's something that we try to do. We try to explain to them and help them understand, like, what does that result mean? Like, what does that tell you?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And there's so many areas we can go in this, because a lot of what we're going to talk about really is fascinating discussion that the audience can benefit. And I think I'm going to jump into this right away. So, the original concept of the company was really in response to a demand. I've got a program. Here's one school. I got this program. Let's add another school. It was, oh, somebody's asking for something, let me create it, okay, or package it for them. Now let me sell it to them. Now let me rinse and repeat that type of relationship again and again and again. So in marketing terms, we would say you became very niched, very niched.
hmm
In banking, we would even call it a concentration of receivables if it's more than one school. Let's start there. There is a great benefit in that approach because you can get expertise status pretty quickly and referrals, but there also can be a disadvantage of that approach. So wherever you want to go from that to how it maybe benefited you at the beginning, and then where you are now. And I don't want to, jump into that without putting all the groundwork, but I think that's a great place to talk about since you mentioned
sure.
how you sold to the schools.
Yeah, so it helped us define our niche market. We were able to break into new schools to build relationships, STEM and the whole, area was a big interest for the schools, and there was a huge demand. And so we stayed niched on that, and we were able to expand. Then the pandemic hit and we had to go virtual, and there was still some demand for enrichment. But then once the schools came back and back into the classrooms again, the demand switched. They said, you know what, we're not interested in STEM and enrichment right now. These kids need the help in filling their academic gaps. What can you do with that? And so being so niched towards enrichment and STEM hurt us because the schools were like, oh, but you guys just do STEM. You don't do anything with math or with any of this. I'm like, yeah, we do. Like we offer it. We just, the demand was STEM at the time. And so I had to convince the schools we worked with, like, we also do this other stuff. And some of them weren't willing to work with us because they're like, well, we just know you as a STEM company. That's it. And so, that's where it was hard because I had to break that brand and kind of rebrand ourselves. And then the other thing was being able to switch. So I had to think like, all right, we had this one model. How do I switch so we could survive? Because if they're not asking for STEM anymore and they want this other stuff, I have to change everything so we can survive and adapt to this new environment.
I know, and here's where the inherent struggle is with no definite answers. So this sounds like I'm going in circles, but I'm coming around the same point. I remember it's been at least 20 years. I wrote an article that business models are like sand castles. And what I meant is in the olden days, a business model might last through three generations, pass it down to my great grandkids. But now it's like a sand castle. It could be just washed away in one afternoon, right? And it's challenging in so many different ways because, like you said, when individuals or companies, which are individuals, they identify you in one category, they can have such a hard time re-identifying you in another category. It can be very challenging for individuals as well as companies. And so you kind of are walking this thin line because if you're a generalist, people don't have a place to place you and they need to place you somewhere to understand you. If they want to place you, we want to go, okay, you fit on this shelf. But then if you get too tidy on that shelf and that shelf changes, oh, you just do that, you're out of business now. It's like, it's so hard to walk the middle line. Your thoughts on that?
Well, plus, if your scope is too broad, then you're compared to industry giants.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to compare them because I can't offer things at their scale. And so that's where, being niched helps because, there's a lot of math support providers out there. But like right now, we have a focus on math intervention, and they don't talk about that. So then it's like I was able to niche within that group and I'm able to open doors with that. So that's where niching as a small business helps a lot, because then it prevents you from having to battle these giants who just have more of a pull with the well, at least with us, with our customers.
Yeah. And you know what I love about us having this conversation? Because we're not talking about it between two marketing people who are wanting to then spew off some kind of pre-described, prescription for how one looks at niche. We're literally talking about it from me seeing a lot of business models be destroyed overnight and a business right now that's going through a lot of changes to companies that maybe can listen to some of these words and identify how they want to brand themselves today. That's kind of my thoughts on this concept. But going back on that, I seen this back in my own company, even my 20s. And now I'm not saying I have any answer for this. So first of all, let me say I never cornered the market on intelligence. But what I've noticed, and I think there's something in this subtle thing I'm saying, if we do look for niches and we have the advantage of the niche, but a layer of our branding is really also communicating our core competencies, we're more able to change. Like, for example, and I'm making it up, maybe doesn't apply, but you'll take it from there. I'm doing it to communicate. Instead of being, we are a program provider of a STEM, our core competencies is to create programs applicable to the learning environment, right? I made that up just now, but I could be totally off with that, John. But to me, when you keep your core competencies, it allows you to pivot, there's the marketing word, and get your customers to have a comfort pivoting you because you no longer are selling A, you have the ability to create based on the scenario. Thoughts on what I'm saying?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we're in that exact place right now. We had to pivot again, because the industry, at least in education, it's changing. There's a lot of things with changing enrollment. Parents are taking their kids and they're putting them into other schooling environments. Funding's been an issue. So there's a lot of things that are impacting the industry. So we've had to look at, well, do we stick with our niche right now and continue down this road and just kind of think like, you know what, we're just going to go for the long term, or do we, look up and see, what's going on in the industry right now, and where should we go with what we're able to do? And so looking at what we're able to do, it's like, well, we can repackage some of the things that we do now in the schools, but think about it from a new markets perspective. So, for example, right now we serve the public schools, but what about charter schools? Do they have different needs, or homeschools? And so we're thinking about it in a different way. And yeah, they have different needs, but we have certain stuff that we do, like you said, our competencies. We have those in place, but if we can package them and know that market well enough, we can start spreading out and seeing what else can work and create different channels of revenue.
And I'm making little notes. So, I was something I wanted to remember. You know what's really interesting too is, in Lori's corner, I was talking about just the consensus, how things are kind of turned upside down, where consensus meant, okay, that's absolutely true. It could mean, no, there's something not true about it. Well, I think the same thing is in the perceived belief, we're, in our age group especially, just do this and you're good for life. And one of that was get big contracts like public schools, be engaged in education. It's never going to change. There's so many of those beliefs that we once had that I think new entrepreneurs, and I mean new, like, you don't have a 20-year-old company, you haven't seen a million changes. I'm not referring to age at all here, but, have to really, or my opinion, look at how they're communicating, how they're marketing, how they're strategizing, and create some built-in flexibility into that before they even start. I don't even know exactly if I said that right, but thoughts on it, because I do think the topic we're talking about, I know you're going through it right now. We're going to get into it even a little bit more, but I think it's so real and important for people to hear.
Yeah, we learned that too, because when you have like, everything going towards one big contract, or that's your big focus, if like with us, if they have a funding freeze, then that impacts us and we can lose our business. So I had to look on how to diversify our portfolio. Like, what else can I pack in there from, small to large, so that, I can keep, fluctuating. It's like it's just a balance. And so what we had to do is we had to look at, like, once we got a large contract, we had to build a infrastructure that could support that, but then we had to still keep something that can support small districts, medium size, so that we could be flexible just even in that. Because again, you never know what you have to do. And that's where we, in thinking like, well, how can we support homeschooling? It's like, well, we know how to support small districts and small schools. Let's take that and run with that model. Like, so it does help. It does help.
Now, one of the, you mentioned infrastructure. So, in the way that your programs are set up, is you have actual employees that are going into the schools and delivering the product, if I can say it that way. One of the
Mhm.
things that I do notice, and I'm not going to say this is always across the board because I hadn't thought about it to this degree, but it seems like, can I say there's some kindness? There's some kindness when you have to pivot into a new market. It usually doesn't require the same old infrastructure. Like, say you got a big plant or you got a big office space or you got all these employees and it writing's on the wall, man, you're going to have to go over here. It usually does not take the same amount of infrastructure to sell, produce, deliver, whatever, as the new avenue does, which means we use this expression in the 80s, you got to right size. You may have to downsize. You may have to let people go. You may have to have different delivery methods. So it does seem as things change, technology and computers has added to it, we may have to go in a new direction and it may even change our core infrastructure, which can lead to some pretty challenging situations you have to address.
Yeah, see, like trying to keep that in mind, that's something that we have thought about. We started working on about a few years ago. We wanted to empower the staff so that we can, we can adjust with each change. I mean, schools alone change. Like, we may have a certain, let's say admin file in place, but they want to customize it, or they want us to change our approach to this. And so what we've done is we cross train the staff, we coach them, we have mentoring, we do all this so that we provide them with the skill set. So then if they have to change on the spot, if they have to rethink anything, they're able to adapt, at the ground floor level. And then it has allowed us to, take on new things. Like, they may be working out of school, find out we do parent workshops. They could talk about it now. Whereas before, they wouldn't know what to say. And then they would say, oh, yeah, just call John. But now they can talk about it. They know everything about it. And so that's allowed us to, grow and to be flexible too. Because like there's just so much we can't account for right now. It's tough out there.
It is, and another thing that you said that I want to bring up, and I'll tell you what it is. Say they want us to, that expression, they want us to, and that's one that my ears picked up on because so many, this is Lori's opinion. I always have to say this is Lori's opinion. I think too many, especially newly formed companies, are under the belief that getting, I'm going to say contractual agreements, whether it's a government contract, whether it's a big public entity, whatever, but it's, basically you win an award on a contract, right? They think that is going to be the salvation because you're automatically going to get all these sales. That's what they're thinking, right? But what they don't, once again, that's not having the experience and the length of time dealing with any kind of contractual agreements, they don't understand that you almost become the follower. They start dictating to you how to run your business, what your selling price is going to be, what you're going to have as your delivery, when you're going to get paid, all these things. So it's no longer a lot of revenue streams. And I tell the customer, these are my payment plans. Oh, and this is what my product offers. And oh, we offer this. You start getting told, and they have a certain amount of power over you because this is the contract, that this is the way you must do business. And it's been my experience for many decades. Usually those demands don't really favor the business. They don't favor the business profitable. They don't favor the business operationally or infrastructure. You have a lot of experience in what I just said. So can you enlighten our listeners that maybe have never gone down this pathway and are maybe they themselves thinking, I'm not saying it's not always a good idea, but that there's considerations. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, so I'm not gonna say that I've I've got to the point where we're good. Like I'm still developing and working on it myself. I know when I first began, when we got a contract, if they said, "Hey, John, I want this turned into this thing," I would go and find any way to serve their requests. And so I was just being overworked by all the contracts. I felt like I had no time to do anything. And I'm like, this has to stop. And they would want to, I mean, like just change everything.
Yeah.
And I felt that they were telling me how to run my business. And I just, I thought at some point, and this is in the beginning, I'm like, this has to stop. There has to be a better way. And so I started creating packages. And they still say like, oh, well, can you do this? Can you do that? And I was a little okay with the changes, at first, but I still stuck to them as much as I could. But like now, I still allow it in some instances, but a lot of times I'm like, well, this is what we offer. And I just keep it, and it's hard because, in my mind, I'm thinking like, are they going to say no and just leave? Are they going to end the contract and just say, well, we're not interested? But when I think about it now, all that time I spent is time I could have spent on building the business, but I was just working and just meeting all their crazy demands. I'm like, all right, like I have to package this stuff and just stick to what I'm offering and say like, this is what we're offering. We'll take your advice, but like we may not be able to make the change and
You
just
know,
move from there.
John, if we just took what you just said and played it over and over again for the rest of this show, I think it would be of great value to everybody because it's key what you said. So I have to go back and pick this apart a little bit. First of all, I want to say, yes, we are talking about big contracts and them having some control. But the behaviors you're speaking with, let me speak on which behavior. Um, I need to do anything my customer asks because I'm too afraid to say no. And it's actually outside of scope creep, there, as we call it. And I am really giving much more effort, work, money, what have you, into fulfilling this than I originally intended. And because I don't have these boundaries of no or these clear cut that this is what we offer and we don't offer this, I can't back out of it because I'm a scared entrepreneur, which many of us are, and I'm afraid to say no. John, I see this on a daily basis and I have it gets so bad where I am telling somebody that they are losing money on every one of these sales and they look at me, I can't tell them that they may not buy from me. And I'm like, it would be a benefit. And this has been going on for years. I remember as a CFO with a company I was working with in my private company, they had a huge contract with LAUSD. And I kept saying it's not profitable. It's profitable to other people, but it's killing us. It wasn't until I wrote a check for the owner to sign directly to the person at that for 10,000, and he said, "Why are you having me pay him 10,000?" I go, "Well, if we take in this project, we're going to lose 20. I thought if you pay her 10 and she goes away, I'll have 10,000 more to pay wages." It made him finally pay attention. And so I think this entrepreneur fear is real, but we got to understand it'd be like saying, "I'm so afraid of asking my boss for a paycheck. He hasn't given me a check in 5 weeks, but that's okay. I'm afraid to ask." That's technically what we're doing.
Yeah, two things that I went through in my growth. One is I didn't know enough about how to present the quote and the proposal. And
Oh,
so I left it really open, like on my price quote. I wrote probably 2 lines on there. I didn't add a lot of details because I just thought, well, we'll like fill it in as we go. Well, that opened the door for them to, ask for anything. So now my quote is like 2 pages long and I detail everything that they're signing up for. And it's very clear and it's there and it's contractual. So,
yeah.
I've learned to do that now. Another thing is boundaries. You mentioned that
Yeah.
word there. That took me a long time to draw the line on things and say, this is what we offer, this is what we can do. And I don't, I do it in a negotiating way now, but and they try to push a bit and I'm like, well, look, if you want more, we're going to have to add that on to the quote and we're going to have to charge more. And then they're like, oh, okay. Then they back up. They're like, all right, we'll take what you have to offer then. And so I've learned to do that. I mean, it was tough. I mean, to say those things because I mean, to me in the beginning, I wanted the sale. But it's like I've learned with the boundary, it helps build that partnership. They actually, what I've noticed is that they respect us a lot more. They see us as much bigger because we are drawing the boundary, and I'm meeting them eye to eye now, as opposed to I'm trying to serve them. It's like, no, we're working together.
I
So it
love
has
that.
changed that dynamic.
I love that. Sadie, can we capture that? So if we look at it like we're working together with our customers and not we're there to serve them. I think that's because what happens when you're an employee of a company? The humanness, I'm going to say, and I'll explain, gets passed down. So what happens is the owner of the company is just trying to bend and wants to work with everybody because it's part of our humanness, but they set a guideline that it has to be sold at this amount. So by the time you're an employee, you're like, it's sold at this amount or not. And so you stay by the rule because it's a rule that your boss gave you. But when we are the owner and we are the salesperson and we are all that, our humanness is right in front of us. And that's where it is so challenging. So it's not even just wanting the sale, I find, it's the humanness of trying to serve. And in this case, we really got to get away from the serving concept. You know what I mean? In terminology, in our own mindset. And I love what you said that the more that you push back with clear delineation, the more they respected you and saw you as a bigger player. See, this is things anyone in the audience, depend on whether they're selling a product or a service. And oh, I wanted to also, you were very clear in your proposals. They were written and they were detailed. I think that was extremely good data and actions that someone can walk away from today to start applying to their company.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a growth, and like I said, with the boundary thing, it's helped me as a entrepreneur and business owner just believe in myself, and like you said, being a business owner and doing sales, it's tough. We're, the company itself, we're very driven by our mission, which is to serve the youth and to serve the
Right.
community. And so I have a bleeding heart for that too. And if I gave and gave and gave, we go out of business. So I had to think about that too. I'm like, well, to continue to serve, I need to draw those lines and draw those boundaries and just be, I had to learn more. I had to, what I did to learn what to put in the price quote. There wasn't anywhere where I found that information. What I did was I went and looked at so the school boards show other price quotes that other groups submit, and I looked at theirs, and these are big companies. I'm like, wait a minute, why are theirs so detailed and mine has like two
Yeah.
bullet points? I'm like, I need to change, you know? And so I started to look to them as the example, and I followed that, and I just saw a difference in that. And it's like I wanted to go towards, I'm like, I not that I don't want to serve them, I wanted to develop a partnership and
Yeah.
let the schools know we're there to partner with them. And I'm like, I need to change that whole dynamic, to get there.
It's so true. And I think that as entrepreneurs, we got to be careful if we get an emotional disdain towards corporations, like they're all bad. Because I always say, if you want to look at rules and policies, return policies of big companies, you'll see they're very long and very clear because they've learned over the years. So there's many things about the infrastructure and processes and procedures that we can emulate from a small company, but we or large company, but we can be flexible and creative and be a small company. I think that's the winning combination because when you're a loose and sloppy small company, you don't get anywhere. But if you're rigid and have no flexibility, you can get turned down real quick. And I think that combination of being creative and being flexible, but emulating processes and procedures that have proven over time is a winning combination.
Yeah, I agree. And it's helped us a lot. It's helped us grow as a company, myself as a business owner, and just taking the time to do that research, like I think I forgot the book I read that in, but it said like, yeah, even though you're competing against giants, you can still see them as the example and see what they do because they've been there. They've been burned on things. They've learned from it. They've built up certain systems. What do they have in place that, like if they already been through it, what can I learn from that? But still have that small feel so that we can be more flexible and more agile, which helps us in this changing environment.
Which keys us into exactly my next question. It couldn't have been on a bigger cue. So here's where I'm going to go with this, John, and you take from here. And this I know can, if it doesn't resonate with everybody today, it may at some point in their business growth. Where you're going, you've been in business over 10 years, things are going well, it looks like it's a slam dunk, I'm going to ride this out to the end. And now you find yourself in a situation where you're having to rethink your business model. Like you said, the schools are no longer as available or profitable. It's not becoming as favorable of a long-term plan for you. But yet the homeschooling and the charter schools, they are actually changing in a more favorable way and could actually be a great recipient of your product. So there's several different ways, and we're going to break down little bits on this because I want to talk about how when you change, you have to change the way you're also structured. But before we go there, John, I want to dabble a little bit into that part that nobody likes to talk about because I love talking about that part. It's been my experience in my own life learning the hard way and seeing, as so many companies I've worked with now over the years, that a lot of times we could, in hindsight, see what we wouldn't see at the time, a slowly eroding of a margin, a slowly eroding of a client, a slowly change, but we didn't want to really face it and believe it was going to be an ongoing trend. So we kind of stayed doing the same thing and lost some valuable time to re-strategize and reorganize that we could have because we just didn't. And then we say we didn't see it coming, but that little voice says, yeah, we kind of did. And we all do that as humans. And I always say it's delusional ignorance. We try to be delusional ignorant of what's happening. And I'm not saying you did or did not. This is just something that I note a lot. And I like to have that conversation because I think the more people have an awareness, the more they kind of then get done with the show and go, let me look around at my environment. Am I closing my eyes to anything I should be looking at? I will just let you go in any direction and you could say, nope,
Yeah.
it doesn't even resonate. But John, please.
So for a couple of years, I mean, for a while, I tried to stay on top of industry trends, but it was really hard because before COVID, like there was a there was a trend towards schools became magnet schools, STEM was a big thing. So I just rode that
Yeah.
wave. And then the pandemic hit, it changed, and they're like, all right, we have to fill learning gaps. Again, I rode that wave and I was prepared for that. But then, I started to get more into following industry trends. I started to, there were emails that I signed up for where every day I get a new article on what's going on, what's being talked about, just so I can see what's going on from the teacher side, the principal side. There's school boards that they meet, they show it live on YouTube. So I'll watch those in the schools that we're in just to kind of see what's going on. What are they talking about? What
Right.
do they seem stressed about? And there's,
Yeah.
what are the during the comment section, what are the parents talking about, or the people that come and talk, just so I can hear, right? And then when I heard that schools are being closed because of low enrollment, I was like, wait a minute, is this a
Where are they
trend? Is
going?
this yeah, and so I started to wonder, and then I started reading all the articles, and they're talking about the same thing. I'm like, all right, I know, and this was about 2 years ago. I heard about this. I'm like, I need to be prepared. Like, where are they going? Do I need to follow them, or do I work with what's going on in the districts? And then, with them, with funding changing, I'm like, all right, like I know that's going to rattle things. The kids are beginning to transition to somewhere else. What do we do as a company? Do I stick with this and just
Yeah.
try to ride this out and hope it, improves? Or do I think like, all right, let's see where the trend is going? Where is the funding going? If it's not going to them, where's it going? Or where are the kids going? And see, what, if where they're going, if that'll fit what we're able to provide.
Yeah. Yep. I love that because if you follow, I always say look up and say who's buying what I'm selling now, going back to the core competencies. Because a lot of times you may find that the new market will buy it at a higher price point, giving you more profitability. You don't need as much revenue because you're getting more profit. It's all about the profit. But what is also interesting is that I think you also have to then look at the new market that you're dealing with, which would, let's talk about homeschool for right now, right? So, and we were just talking about it, and I was telling you that I am no barometer of change, but I've noticed just in my Zoom calls with my SBDC clients, especially in the last month or so, so many of the parents had said, I need to meet this. I've got homeschool, or they're on a hybrid, and this is the day that I'm homeschooling. And I didn't hear so many people say the word homeschooling before COVID than they did during the pandemic. But now it seemed like in the last 6 months, school starting again, so many parents meeting with me were talking about homeschool. So I said, it just seems like there's a trend in this homeschool. Maybe this is a good place for you to go. But, and this is the point I was getting at, it does require that you then look at what is the buying criteria, what matters to the parents homeschooling. It could be, and I believe it probably is, I'm not in this world, so I'm actually no one to speak on it, but the school buying your program had one concern because it wasn't just about the parents, it was about the school and certain things. The parents buying a program have a total different way of looking at it. It will change your delivery structure, create lovely opportunity. I do believe personally it will, but it does make you have to go back and look at how you have structured everything to take advantage of it as well. So my statement is really, we can't be so naive when we change customers that is just the customer part of our business, the customer acquisition that changes. Often it is many aspects about the business itself.
Yeah, and just to talk about that, so over the summer when we have a lot of downtime, one of the things we did was we analyzed different markets. We looked at what other school environments or learning environments are there that we could serve either in person or through a product, based off of what we are able to provide. And we analyzed everything from what is their persona, what are their needs, and we just broke it down. Like, I mean, we created a matrix, and it took us a couple weeks to break everything down and do all the research on this. But this is where, and we even assess which group would be the easiest to transition into? What's
Low
going to
hanging
take the most
fruit.
amount of work? Because
Yep.
some sounded great, but I'm like, man, I could just imagine all the work involved. And so it's like, what can we transition into where we're going to get a good return and it's going to take not, just not as much work, just so we can, have those options. And this was one of them. It's like, well, we already have a curriculum. And
Yep.
that's something that, that it's been out in the field. And I mean, we tried it out ourselves. So we've improved it over the years. I'm like, if we could just change how we package it, then we have something. It's not that much more work. It's just understanding that market a little bit more and how to reach out to them. It's just a bit different, but I'm like, it's not as much as trying to completely change to a different arena.
Yeah, and what you're speaking to is a lot of what I would have to do in turnarounds. Obviously the company's already in trouble in that situation, and more than likely they cannot get any funding. So what I have to do is look at what is the low-hanging fruit, what's the least we can do with the quickest return. Because we could have something that maybe takes a lot of work, but we can get cash flow coming in a month. Well, that means let's put in some extra hours because we need that cash flow in a month. So I think that one of the determining factors on the time period you have in the transition is how much cash reserves you had, which is directly reflected by how fast the transaction or transition into the new market happened. So it really is this almost need to be the captain of the ship, standing out looking over the horizon, and always be in question on what is going on. And maybe I'm going to throw this out there, even if you slightly suspect, just ever little slightly suspect, take a bit of time and resources to try to go after a market that maybe isn't even one you're planning on, just to already have a footing in the creation process, the marketing or the delivery or any piece. So if the suspect comes true, you've already got a pathway. If it doesn't come true, you may end up with a new market that you find to be very good for you. Thoughts on that?
I think that's the best advice. I've been trying to branch out my network because right now it's just been principals and district leaders and teachers. And I'm like, all right, but if I want to branch out into these other markets, I need to get to know the people in these markets and start making connections. So I began to talk to people in homeschooling, into what else? After school, community schools, and just trying to get to know the people and trying to see where the opportunities are, what are their needs, and trying to hear from them. And so as I'm making these connections, I'm throwing out there what we can do. And like even though it's not there yet, I'm just
Yep.
letting them know like here's what we've done, but here's what we could do for you. And some are beginning to ask like, well, can you do it like like they're showing an interest. And so I'm like, well, as long as these doors are open, like I could have four streams of business right now. If one closes, then I still have the others to work on,
Yep.
you know?
Yep. Well, and I've said this before on the show, I've always been an advocate of multiple revenue streams since I've been in my 20s. I think it's because I just always had come from a position of, internal fear. What if this disappeared? Where am I going to get the money to pay the rent, right? So the thing though is when you go after tiny little gumballs, if you will, versus a big contract, it takes a lot more effort to get them, but it creates more stability. You don't lose one and one disappears, right? And so I think that understanding that that client acquisition requires different activities, and it may require you to create an entire new network process. Is not just packaging the product. It's like, well, we don't even know how people make decisions. We don't even know who to go to. We don't even know. And so I am going to make my last words till I end this and transfer it to you for yours, John, which first of all, I want to say thank you for coming on and speaking about this. Guys, I asked John at the very beginning because I said, you're going through this right now. Is this a conversation we could have? He was more than gracious to, because I think it's an important conversation for all, whether you're starting out. So these are going to be my words of wisdom. Everybody, after this show, even though it may be not warranted, ask yourself a question. If my industry and customers changed dramatically tomorrow, what would I do? And maybe think about it enough to have a plan B and maybe even see if you want to do some slight execution on that plan B, depending on what is happening right now in your industry. That's my final words on that. John, your thoughts on anything you'd like to share with the audience?
I would say just be open, learn from everyone you can, take in everything you can. That's what I've done. And it's helped. I mean, even reading books has helped. They just learn and
Yeah.
absorb everything. And then the other thing is, like you were saying, have a plan B, but already just put your foot forward in those environments because you never know if you have that plan B, if you have a door even cracked open, then you're able to move quickly if you need to, because you just never know in these
You never
environments.
know. I'm going to make a bold prediction too before we end. Okay, John, I'm not into predicting, but I'm going to make a bold prediction. Maybe true,
I'm
maybe not.
ready for it.
Here I go. I'm going to make a bold prediction. We've talked several times, so I have a familiarity with the company in the past and your programs, right? I think it's going to be a little bit of a challenge because you're trying to, get into this new market. And so there's going to be some rough, scary little times as you're trying to transition. But I feel as though the programs and the way you go about the program, and I'm speaking of the learning process, the engagement with the kids on that level is something that although the schools understood, they have a different criteria. Who will really, really want and love this is the homeschooling parents because they're looking for a different way to teach their kids. That's why they're doing it in the first place, right? So once you
Mhm.
tap into that market and find your way to communicate, given that homeschooling moms and dads have such great networks and they have Facebook groups and they speak amongst themselves, once you get tapped into that, I think you might find a customer that is more excited to use your product than you've had in the past, bringing complete joy because that's what you created it for, also be more profitable and reduce your infrastructure requires for the delivery of it because they're going to be like the grocers. We're checking out our own groceries. They're going to be doing their own delivery. But I think that you stay on this focus, and I think your programs have not been fully actualized to their potential. And so you basically have a a desire and need to let your programs be actualized. And so that's going to be the driving force behind finding this new market. And I think it will happen. That's my bold prediction for you, John.
Thank you. I mean, I feel the same exact way. I really do.
So if anybody's out there and anybody is in the homeschooling area or has any tips or anything to share with John, you got his information in there. Please reach out. Or if you are a homeschool mom, he's got some really cool programs, as you can see. Sadie, going to bring you back for final comments on this. Once again, thought-provoking show.
You know what? I honestly wish I would have heard this when I first started out as a freelancer. Like the one about where we wrote it in the chat about work with your customer, not serving them. Oh, that one hit so hard.
Yes, yeah, I loved it too. I loved it too. We do. I love the guests coming on and the conversations because I don't care who you are in the audience, what you're doing. There is so much that resonates to each and every one. John, I thank you for coming back on the show. We're gonna have to have you back on in the next 6 months to a year and
Of
get the
course.
rest of the story. We're gonna have to. There's no way we cannot. Like I say, everybody, I do believe that the small businesses always have been and are the way to the future. I'm not saying they're the way to the future because they never were. They always have been. But our time is now more than ever before. And I think if we as individual consumers buy from small companies and small companies buy from other companies, I just think the world's going to be a pretty good place. That's my personal opinion. So with that, guys, I went over again. I have been on the last couple shows because they've been so fascinating. So this is where I have to say, of course, Sadie will be here. You can pick up John's information and you can also read everybody's chat and comments in the chat. She always keeps this live after John and I leave. So I'm going to say to my frequent flyers, I saw you guys out there. Mary, Chris, Brenda, I see you guys every single week. A few names I saw go by. Thank you for being here every single week. Yes, Chris, take our power back. I saw that. You know I'm always saying take our power back. Oh my God, I'm preaching again, guys. Okay, I better stop or I'm going to start preaching. So I'm going to say to our frequent flyers, thank you for being here every week. If you are new to the show, please check out next week's Small Biz Talk with your host, Lori Williams. Many thanks to you, John. Sadie, you're it. Take over, and I will see everybody next week.
All
Bye.
right. Bye, Lori. See you next week. All righty, guys. We know the drill. Don't worry. I'm going to be here hanging out for a few. I didn't want to drop in Lori's webinars until we were done because those take up a big, big, big space right there. But please click away, sign up. We got the survey going on. We value your input like none other. So let us know. There's an open comment box in there about, things that you would like to learn, things that you would like more help with, because as we know, Lori is amazing. But we also have several business advisors over at the SBDC. So we are just a big network. We are here to help. We are your tax dollars at work. So these are no cost services for you. So if you're not a client of the SPD, sign up. SBDC, I'm sorry. Please sign up. And because, like I said, we offer these webinars, these programmings, all these wonderful services for you. And I say, why not take it, get more services, right? Like, get a one-on-one appointment. Like, I cannot speak enough about the SBDC. So I'm going to hang out. I'm going to put myself on mute. Please let me know if there's something in the chat that you need to see again. I just been dropping down the things, but one that I am going to put for you is our speakers information, because with so much happening in the chat, things get disconnected in there. So go ahead, click away. I'm going to leave this live for a little bit, and if you need anything, don't see anything, let me know and I will drop that down in there for you. I saw someone asking about the Q&A available for review. I think what you're talking about is the chat, and we actually let me see. Oh, Q&A and chat. Okay, I don't know how the video process is out. I actually don't handle that part of it, but I don't believe on the YouTube channel that comes out. I'm sorry, unfortunately. So if there are any specific questions that you have, definitely please reach out. I'm putting out how you can reach Lori, so let me put that in there for you. So please, once again, let me know what you need. I will put that in there for you, the chat. Otherwise, happy clicking, happy linking away.